the lads, welcome back to the Cossy podcast. My name is Cossy. Welcome back to a brand new video. This is the latest Arsenal news and transfer news as well. Arsenal's plan is to sign a striker right after Nketiah is sold, and that is not changing. However, according to Ryan Taylor, Arsenal are willing to sell some fringe players, some unused players at the club to make this happen, and that will include the likes of Reece Nelson and a couple of other players that Nketiah will deem unusable. So in this video, we're going to be diving into who are the striker options that are likely to be landing at the Emirates. João Pedro has been mentioned. We are talking about Gyokeres. We are also talking about Osimhen, because yesterday reports in Italy were saying that Arsenal have never given up on Osimhen, and there is a possibility that Osimhen could end up at Arsenal this summer. As well, we'll talk about the other players, because it's not only Gyokeres, it's not only Osimhen, it's not only João Pedro. We are still looking at Solanke, we are still looking at Tone, we are still looking at other strikers as well. So which striker will end up at Arsenal? What really determines who will end up? Probably the price. For me, it's going to determine. The age will determine as well, and I think how ready the player is to sit on the bench rather than to start every single game is also going to determine as well. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel as well. Arsenal are hunting for a striker this summer after selling Nketiah. Obviously, we are still in talks with Olympic Marseille for that one, but we are planning on signing a striker. According to SR Collins, right there you can see he says that Arsenal's plan is to sign a striker, and they will be willing to sell a number of fringe players in order to do so. Now, right at the moment, Victor Gyokeres, in terms of all the strikers we want, seems closer than most. Arsenal have a verbal agreement, on personal terms with the player. We have had the information collected about the player, and we have been scouting him. And I've already said that you don't scout a player for almost 6 months, 7 months, and you also continue monitoring his progress inside the transfer window if you don't want to sign him, if you don't want to sign a player in that position. So Gyokeres, we're going to talk about him, but he's closer than most. He's the player that all believe is a priority, is the objective if Arsenal are going to sign a striker. And if Eddie leaves, the player that is likely to replace him is Gyokeres. However, there is a case to be answered, and there is a case to be had for players like João Pedro, who can play each and everywhere on that forward line. But before we get into that, let's first talk about Nketiah for a bit. Where are we with Nketiah? Now, yesterday, Arsenal received another offer for Nketiah, 27 million euros, and it was rejected. I've seen a few of the content creators on Twitter and YouTube telling Arsenal, just get the money and run. Just take the money and run. And I'm not going to lie, although I kind of feel like it's a little bit low. For Nketiah, I would take the money and run. But of course, we've got to trust Eddie. You've got to trust Nketiah. They have been spot on with sales this summer. Not every summer, but this summer. They've been spot on with sales. Emil Smith-Rowe especially, that's been a very good sell. So if they're saying we will get more money from Nketiah, we can get more money from Nketiah, my hands are up. I am waiting for what they can do. And again, why I don't want Arsenal to be bullied on the Nketiah deal is this. Once we sell Nketiah, we are going to be vulnerable on the market. Reason? Everyone will know that Arsenal need a striker. We know that Gabriel Jesus and Kai Havertz are not going to be our main. They will be our main number 9s, but they're not going to be the only ones. So Arsenal will be in the market for a striker. And I don't really believe Mikel Arteta believes that a striking partnership of Gabriel Jesus and Kai Havertz is enough to win you the league. He has said he wants 114 points. If you're a manager and you want 114 points, and you try to convince us that Gabriel Jesus and Havertz are the two players that are going to lead you to 114 points, you are a bloody liar, honestly. So I think Nketiah's move is very important to who signs a striker, but it's also very important to whether we sign a striker and for how much we actually sign a striker. So if we can get 30 million euros for Nketiah or 35 million euros for Nketiah, that would be a much better deal, because it would allow Arsenal to have the funds secured to go and sign another player. And when I look at the players on this list, Osimhen is expensive, Gyokeres is expensive, Tony is expensive, Solanke is expensive, and João Pedro is expensive as well. So that tells you, regardless of the player we decide to sign, regardless of the one that Arsenal decide to splash the money on, we are not going to have a cheap deal for a striker this summer. So Nketiah looks more likely to leave. That's the good news. The bad news is that the price is still very low. Arsenal initially wanted 35 million pounds. That's around 41, 42 million euros. But all clubs are saying we cannot give you 40 million euros for Nketiah. Like, you're cheating us in broad daylight. And I'm not going to lie. If we sell Nketiah for 40 million euros, that is broad day robbery. We need to face some roadblocks, along the way in the future. But I tell you, if we get some good money from Nketiah, that's going to facilitate a very good deal. So who is coming in and who is likely to be our next striker? First and foremost, Gyokeres is the one that every outlet out there, that every source out there believes is going to come in. Now, Fabrizio has always talked about Gyokeres alongside Arsenal signing a striker, and he's always said they've collected information on the player, they've collected information from Sporting Lisbon, they have information on salary, they have a pre-agreement on salary and a contract, but there is nothing that has actually advanced from that stage. So Arsenal have, I think with the Victor Gyokeres deal, it's a deal that reminds me of the Yuri Tillemans deal. Arsenal did a lot of groundwork earlier on before the summer, before preseason, and the expectation and hope was that Arsenal would get to force Sporting CP to reduce on their asking price. So since May, June, July, we have been waiting for Sporting CP to reduce their asking price, and that has not happened. But why I think Gyokeres would be the one that would come in, I'm thinking about value for money, but also I'm thinking about the amount of work we have already done on Gyokeres. Listen to this. Scouting, we've done the scouting on him. And I know we've done the scouting on a couple of other players, but I think Arsenal have really scouted Gyokeres too much and too deeply for us to just walk away now. I think if Arsenal really thought that they were not going to get him, the scouting would have been reduced a little bit. But even after his injury, Arsenal have continued to monitor him, and Arsenal have continued to follow him. And that shows you that he is the player we want. He is the player, Edu and Mikel want to sign. So, do I believe the price is going to come down? Because that depends on that. No. Do I believe Arsenal are going to smash the transfer record, at Sporting CP and signing for 86 million pounds? No. But I think there will be a consensus. The moment negotiations start, and probably the negotiations have not started because Arsenal believe they want to do deal by deal. They want to sign Calafiori, then sign Merino, and probably go to a winger or probably go to a striker. They want to sign one player after the other. So the striker situation might not happen very quickly. But the moment negotiations start, Arsenal and Sporting CP, in my opinion, will be able to get to a certain point. They will be able to find a consensus in between there. Whether it's about Arsenal raising their offer, or it's about Sporting CP reducing on their demands and expectations, in terms of, a transfer fee. But at some point in time, we are going to see a consensus. And even if it's not just Arsenal, even if there are other clubs, Liverpool are interested in Gyokeres, even if it's Liverpool, there will be a consensus. There will be a compromise on Sporting CP's side or on the team that is willing to buy. Because Gyokeres for 86 million, that is still expensive, right? That is still expensive. If you can get him for 65 million, that is reasonable. But a Sporting CP willing to give you their player, their star man, at a reasonable price, that might not be able to happen. But of course, we're going to follow this throughout the summer. The striker situation is one that's going to drag on, so don't expect a striker to sign tomorrow. It's going to happen probably even after the Premier League has started, even after our second game of the Premier League has been played. We will be hearing more links and more stories about strikers. Now, yesterday, Arsenal started inquiring about João Pedro. And João Pedro is a very important name on the list right now. And the reason as why João Pedro is very important is he carries a quality, and he possesses a quality that Mikel Arteta likes very much in forward players. Can you play everywhere. So when you think about these players, listen to this list and tell me one player that can play as a right winger, left winger, central midfielder, central attacking midfielder, and also a striker, right? Listen to them. Gyokeres, Solanke, Ivan Toney, Victor Osimhen, João Pedro. There is only one player that is not a typical out and out number 9. Now, I'm not saying I want this full package striker. I actually prefer a typical out and out number 9. And Romano said a couple of months ago that's what Arsenal were looking at, although they're still assessing their market opportunities. But why João Pedro is a very, very important name on this list is if Mikel Arteta is really looking to sign a player that is going to give him quality, in all departments of the forward line, it's got to be João Pedro. It's got to be João Pedro. And I don't think João Pedro is going to be 80 million. I think you can get him for 75 million euros, or you can get him for 70 million euros. Brighton have bought a couple of players this summer. They might need to sell. Of course, they don't need to sell. They did make a huge profit last summer. Last season, they sold very well. But if they decide to sell, João Pedro could be one of the players they can get good money, real money from. So, apart from Gyokeres, if Gyokeres is number 1, the second one on the list for me, in terms of strikers, would be João Pedro. And he would be there because I know Mikel Arteta would value him, and he also loves a player that has played in the Premier League. We all know that. Like, look at our squad. How many players have we signed because of Premier League experience? Ramsdale, Premier League experience. Ben White, Premier League experience. Declan Rice, Premier League experience. Who else? Couple of players as well. I mean, even Mikel Merino has played in the Premier League. If you're bringing him in from Real Sociedad, but he's played at Newcastle, again, you're dealing with Premier League experience. So Zinchenko, Gabriel Jesus, all that is Premier League experience. So Mikel Arteta, as we understand him, he likes Premier League experience. He loves Premier League experience. And if you couple that with João Pedro's talent and the fact that he can play everywhere and the fact that he's still very young, that's a very good deal. Remember, Arsenal are not looking to sign only older players. Although the strategy this summer is to mix up older players with younger players, and we've done that very well so far. 28 years in Mikel Merino, and then we have signed an 18-year-old goalkeeper. We have signed a 20-year-old centre-back in Ricardo Calafiori. So we've done that very well. So João Pedro, in terms of priority, would be second. Now, Ivan Toney is third for me. Ivan Toney is third. And the reason as to why Ivan Toney is third is, yes, he's older than João Pedro. He's an out-and-out number 9, but he's still got Premier League experience. He's still a big centre-forward, a good centre-forward. And most importantly, Ivan Toney would be willing to come into this Arsenal side and blend in as part of the squad. I'm not saying willing to sit on the bench. I'm saying blend in and as part of the squad. Yeah, you know what I mean. I mean sit on the bench as opposed to starting every game. Because with players like Ivan Toney, I remember there was a time when Liverpool signed, what was his name? The striker from Southampton. Ricky Lambert, right? Ricky Lambert. So Liverpool signing Ricky Lambert, they had brought him in as part of the larger squad. Such players don't come to play every single game. If he does well and good, he plays every single game. Cavani at Manchester United, Falcao at United and Chelsea. If you bring him in, you expect him to play some games, but not every single game. But if he does well, then he can play every single game. And of course, for me, Ivan Toney has the capability and ability to play every single game ahead of so many strikers, ahead of so many players. So I'm going to say Toney would be number 3. The price is right. Premier League experience. What we saw from his mentality from during the Euros is very different from what people have been telling us. Oh, his mentality is not good. Oh, he's got a bad character. We didn't see that bad character at the Euros. And by the way, he didn't play much at the Euros. I think people look at Ivan Toney on the pitch and they're like, I just don't like this guy. Like, I don't like him. And maybe that kick about with the boys, bantering Arsenal, maybe that didn't help his case as well with Arsenal fans, maybe. But for me, I don't see a problem there. So he would be my option number 3. Number 4 would be Osimhen. But Osimhen, the price, it just feels not right. The price is not right. Like, when you feel like a player is worth the amount of money they're charging, Osimhen is not worth the amount of money they're charging. So Osimhen, there've been reports in Italy recently, like within the last 10-17 hours, that Arsenal have not given up on Osimhen. And I don't think Arsenal have given up on Osimhen 100%. But is the price gonna come down? No. If the price is not going to come down, we are not there. We are gone. Absolutely gone. And then the other option in number 5, I would have Dominic Solanke. Yeah, I'd have Solanke. Solanke, again, Premier League experience, had a very good season last season. I don't think he is that great for me. But if Arsenal really want a striker to replace Nketiah, you might as well get Solanke. And again, he brings something that we don't have in Gabriel Jesus and Kai Havertz, a real centre forward.